My wife spent 3 years telling people I was boring. She said it the way other women brag about a good vacation. At dinner parties, at her mother's table, in the checkout line at the pharmacy, she'd tip her head toward me and go, "Oh, this is Wade. He's in plumbing supply. Isn't that just the most thrilling thing you've ever heard?" And everybody would laugh. And I'd smile down into my water glass like a man who had learned to take a joke. Here is the part she never bothered to learn. There was a 12-page agreement locked in a fireproof box in my father's old office, and her own lawyer had all but begged her to read it before she signed it. She didn't. She initialed every page in about the time it takes to sign for a package at the door, laughed, and told me she wasn't the kind of woman who married a man for his money. If she had read even the 4th page, she would have known exactly how boring I am. About $31 million worth of boring. Let me back up, because this isn't really a story about money. It's a story about what happens when you decide a quiet man is beneath your attention, and you are so certain of it that you never once look up long enough to check. My name is Wade. I'm 44 years old. I live in the same county I was born in, and I sell pipe. Try to contain yourself. I sell pipe and fittings and water heaters and furnaces and the 1,000 small, dull parts that keep the water running and the houses warm across 3 counties in Ohio. The company is called Buckeye Pipe and Supply. My grandfather Walt started it after the war as a single hardware and plumbing store with a dirt lot and 1 delivery truck. My father Cliff turned it into a real distributor. I turned it into 6 branches, a fleet, and the largest private employer in the county. And if that sounds like bragging, understand that on the day this story starts, almost nobody in my own house knew a word of it. I need you to sit with that, because everything that happened later hangs on it. The woman I was married to did not know what I did for a living. Not really. She knew the shape of it, the way you know there's a factory on the edge of town without ever once wondering who owns it. Once or twice, early on, somebody in town mentioned that the Renners had done all right for themselves, and she heard small-town pride about a little pipe shop and let it go, because doing the math would have meant being curious about the pipe business, and she wasn't. To her, I was a man who went to a warehouse every morning and came home smelling faintly of cardboard and cut metal. A man who drove a 15-year-old truck and clipped coupons out of the Sunday paper and would not, under any circumstances, pay for the good parking at the airport. You're already asking the obvious question. How does a woman live in a man's house for 3 years and not know he's worth what he's worth? I promise you I'm going to answer that, all of it, because it's the part people get wrong and it's the part that matters. But to understand it, you have to understand why a man would build his whole life to look like nothing on purpose. And for that, I have to tell you about the woman I almost married before Brooke, and about the worst year of my father's life. When I was 31, Buckeye nearly went under. It wasn't anything dramatic. A big builder we carried went bankrupt, owing us most of a year's margin. The bank got nervous, and for about 18 months we were 1 bad quarter from losing everything my grandfather had started. My father had a heart that was already failing him, and he spent that whole stretch grave-faced at his desk, doing math that wouldn't come out right. I worked 7 days a week. I stopped sleeping. And the woman I was engaged to, a bright, pretty woman who had loved the idea of being with a man whose family owned something, watched all of that for about 4 months, and then quietly found herself a man whose life looked easier. I don't tell you that for sympathy. I bring it up because of what my father said to me the night she gave the ring back. He was sitting in his recliner with an oxygen line under his nose, and he wasn't angry. He was almost relieved, and he said, "Wade, you just got the most expensive lesson of your life for free. You find out who's really with you when it looks like you've got nothing. Remember that the next time it looks like you've got something." He died 4 years later, when I was 35. The business saved and the debt gone, and I ran the whole thing myself from that day on, with his voice in my head every single day. You find out who's with you when it looks like you've got nothing. So I built a life that looked like nothing, Not as a trick, as a filter. I kept the truck until it rattled. I kept my father's plain brick house on Sycamore instead of building the kind of place a man in my position builds, the kind with a circle driveway and a name for the great room. I ate breakfast at the same diner, a little place called the Bluebird that Nora has run since I was in high school, and I ordered the same 2 eggs and wheat toast, and I tipped like a rich man because that at least felt honest. The money went where money should go if you're not a fool, back into the business, into the people who worked for me, into things nobody could see. And I was happy, in the flat, unremarkable way of a man who has made peace with his life. I had Duke, a big, dumb, yellow dog who rode shotgun in the truck and thought the warehouse was heaven. I had nearly 200 people whose paychecks came out of Buckeye, whose kids I'd watched grow up in the company Christmas photos. I had a town where a man could get a wave at 4 different stoplights. I did not have someone to come home to, and I had mostly stopped expecting to. And then, at a cousin's wedding in Columbus when I was 40, I met Brooke. She was 30 at the time, and she was the most alive person in that ballroom. That's the honest truth, and I want to be fair to her because it would be easy to tell this story as if she were a monster from the first handshake. And she wasn't. She was funny and quick, and she looked at me across a bad DJ and a worse cash bar like I was the only sensible thing in the room. I was the guy in the plain grey suit who'd fixed the wobbling cake table without being asked. She told me later that's what got her, that I'd just quietly solved a problem while everyone else stood around, and I believed her, and maybe it was even true at the start. I did not lie to her. I want that on the record because later she would tell people I had, and it's the one thing I won't wear. I told her I worked in plumbing and heating supply, which is exactly what I do. I told her the business was my family's, which it is. When she asked, early, what my house was like, I said it was my dad's old place and I'd never gotten around to leaving it, which is the truth. What I did not do was sit a woman I'd known for 3 weeks down and recite a balance sheet at her, because the entire point, the whole hard-won lesson of my life, was to find out if a woman could love the man before she ever met the money. My father's voice. You find out who's with you when it looks like you've got nothing. So I let it look like nothing. I let it look like a decent, dull, comfortable man from a small town, and I waited to see if that would be enough for her. For about a year, it seemed like it was. We had a good year, the kind you replay later, looking for the crack you missed. She moved to town. She said she loved how uncomplicated everything was, how you could see the stars, how I always knew the waitress's name. We got married in the spring at a little stone church, and her mother cried, and my mother cried, and Nora catered it out of the Bluebird and swore me to secrecy about how little I'd let her charge. It was, I thought, the happiest I'd ever been. I remember standing at the front of that church thinking my father was wrong, that you don't always have to look like nothing, that sometimes a person just loves you. The prenup happened 3 weeks before that wedding, and I need to walk you through it slowly, because it is the hinge the entire rest of this turns on. It was not my idea, exactly. It was my lawyer's, and she was right. Her name is Ellen Boyd. She has handled the Renner family's business for 30 years. She is somewhere north of 60 and does not waste a single word. And when I told her I was getting married, she did not congratulate me first. She said, "Wade, you are the sole owner of a company that employs half this county. You will sign an agreement, and she will have her own lawyer, a real one, not a friend. And there will be full disclosure, and everyone will do this properly. And if that offends her, better you find out in April than in a courtroom." "That's not romance," I said. Ellen looked at me over her glasses and said, "No, it's the opposite of romance, that's the point. Romance is what you'll have the other 364 days a year." So we did it properly. And this is the detail I need you to hold on to, because it comes back at the end like a hammer. A prenuptial agreement in Ohio doesn't hold up just because 2 people signed it. The courts throw them out all the time, and they throw them out for specific reasons. If one side hid what they were worth, if one side got railroaded into it, if there was no real chance to think it over, if the terms were flat out unconscionable. Ellen knew every one of those trapdoors, and she built the agreement to close every single one. Brooke had her own attorney, paid for by me so there'd be no question. A sharp young woman from Columbus. There was full financial disclosure, a whole schedule attached, Schedule A, listing what I owned. Buckeye Pipe and Supply, the holding company behind it, the real estate, the investment accounts, the number at the bottom. All of it, in black and white, weeks before the wedding, with her own lawyer sitting right beside her. And Brooke would not read it. I was in the room. I watched it happen. And at the time, I thought I was watching love. And I've had a lot of quiet nights since to understand what I was actually watching. Her lawyer slid the document across the table and said, plainly, "I need you to read this carefully, all of it. Especially the disclosures and the sections on separate property and support. Take it home. Take a week. Call me with questions." And Brooke laughed. She actually laughed. A warm, dismissive little laugh. And she said, "Oh my God, I am not going to sit here and read Wade's bank statements. That's so..." And she wrinkled her nose. "That's so gross. I'm not marrying him for this." She flipped to the back. She initialed each page without looking at any of them, the way you scroll to the bottom of the terms and click, "I agree." She signed the last page. She pushed it back across the table, and she squeezed my hand and she said, "There. Can we go get lunch now?" Her own lawyer looked at me. I'll never forget it. That lawyer looked at me with an expression I couldn't read then and can read perfectly now. It was pity. For which of us, I still don't know. I took that as the finest thing a woman had ever done for me. She hadn't looked at the money. She'd signed away her claim to a fortune she didn't even glance at, because she loved me and not it. Do you see how a lonely man tells himself a story? Do you see how badly I wanted my father to be wrong? I put that 12-page agreement in the fireproof box in his old office, and I honestly believed I would never need it. And for about a year, I was the luckiest, boring man in Ohio. The first crack was so small I filed it under nothing. We were at a backyard thing that summer, some couple from her spin class, and a man asked me what I did, and before I could answer, Brooke answered for me. "Oh, Wade's in plumbing supply," she said, and did a little thing with her voice, a downward slide, plumbing supply, like the words themselves were a punchline, and the man chuckled, and she smiled, pleased, and moved us along to talk about their trip to Cabo. It stung. And then I told myself it was nothing. She was just making conversation. Everybody makes their spouse a character at parties. That's what I did with all of it, at the start. I filed it under nothing. But it kept happening. And the pile of nothing got taller. She started calling my truck an embarrassment, which, fine, it was. That was the point of it. But she said it in front of people. At the country club her mother had gotten us a guest pass to, when the valet kids brought it around and it coughed. She started calling my coupons sad. "Wade, we are not people who clip coupons," she said. And I wanted to ask her who she thought we were. And I didn't. Because I was still telling myself she'd relax into the life, that the shine of the city was still wearing off. I gave her a household account and a budget that would have made most people in that town gasp, and she treated it like an allowance from a cheapskate, because she had no idea it wasn't 1% of what came in. How could she? She never asked. She had decided what I was in the first month, and after that she wasn't collecting information, she was collecting evidence. It wasn't all cold, and that's what kept me in it. That's what keeps anybody in it. There'd be a Sunday out of nowhere when she would climb back into being the woman from the wedding, make the coffee, put her cold feet on my legs under the blanket, and tell me about her day like she wanted me to actually have it with her. And I'd feel the whole thing swing back up and think, there she is. We're going to be fine. One rainy morning that second fall, she came out to the truck with an umbrella because I'd forgotten mine. And she walked me all the way to the door of the Bluebird, holding it over my head. And Nora saw it through the glass and gave me a look across the counter like, "You see, she's in there somewhere." I lived on scraps like that longer than I'm proud of. That's the cruel thing about the swing. It isn't the drop that gets you. It's that every drop starts from a little higher up, so it hurts a little more each time. And you keep climbing back anyway for the view. There's a thing I did once, in year 2, that I think about more than anything else. We'd just finished the new distribution center out on the county road, 140,000 square feet, 30 new jobs, the thing I was proudest of building since my father died. I wanted to show her, not to reveal anything, just to share it, the way you want to show the person you love the thing your hands have made. I said, "Hey, come out to the site with me Saturday. I want to show you what we built." And she was scrolling her phone, and without looking up, she said, "Oh God, Wade, please don't make me look at a warehouse. It's so boring. Take pictures." Take pictures. I stood in my own kitchen and I felt something go quiet in my chest. And I didn't push it, because pushing it would have meant admitting what it meant. I stopped trying to show her things after that. She would later tell her mother and her friends, and eventually a lawyer, that I was closed off, that I never let her in, that I kept secrets. And the terrible, simple truth is that she trained me not to share, one bored sigh at a time, and then she called the silence a betrayal. Let me give you one example of what boring actually bought, because in 3 years, my wife never once asked me for a single one. Gus ran the yard at the main branch for 30 years. He started under my father, and he taught me to drive a forklift when I was 16, and worse than useless. 2 winters ago, his wife got sick, the bad kind, the kind of word you don't say out loud twice, and her treatment was 2 hours away in Columbus, and it dragged on for the better part of a year. Gus never missed a shift he could keep, and the ones he couldn't, we covered without a word, and his pay never dropped a single dollar the whole time. Whatever the insurance tried to fight us on, and it fought us on plenty, quietly went away, and Gus never opened a bill he couldn't pay. I didn't do it to be a good man. I did it because Gus taught me the forklift, and because my father would have haunted me otherwise. The whole county knew that story. Brooke slept next to me for 3 years and never once heard it, because hearing it would have meant asking a question about the boring warehouse, and she'd rather take pictures she never looked at. Her mother did not help. Sharon is one of those women who confuses taste with virtue, who can look at a happy person and find the thing they're missing. Sharon had wanted more for Brooke, a bigger name, a bigger house, a man whose money announced itself. From the day of the wedding, Sharon looked at my brick house on Sycamore and my rattling truck, and did that thing with her mouth, the small tightening. And every visit she'd find a new way to say it. "This is cozy," she'd say, the pause doing all the work. Must be nice to be so unbothered about things. And you have to understand, I could have bought and sold Sharon's whole subdivision with what Buckeye cleared in a slow quarter. And I sat there and let her feel sorry for her daughter for marrying down, because to correct her would have been to fail my father's test out loud. So I ate it. For 3 years, I ate all of it. And I told myself eating it was a kind of strength. Her friend Kayla was worse, because Kayla had ambition where Sharon only had taste. Kayla had married a man who traded something in Chicago and left him for a man who traded more. And Kayla had opinions about what Brooke was, quote, settling for. I'd hear the tail end of it when Brooke was on the phone in the next room, the low, urgent, girls-only voice. "You are so much more than this," Kayla would be saying. "You gave up the city for a man who won't even..." And then Brooke would notice me and drop to a whisper. "I want to tell you I didn't care. I cared." I loved my wife, and I could feel her being talked out of me by inches, by 2 women who had decided that a man who didn't perform his worth couldn't possibly have any. I want to be fair to her about where it came from, Because she wasn't born cruel, she was born scared. Brooke grew up with the lights getting shut off. Her father Gary was a decent man who was never quite steady, a job and then no job, a good year and then a repossessed car, and Sharon spent that whole childhood terrified and furious, teaching her daughter one lesson above all the others, that money was the only thing standing between a family and the dark. Brooke learned that money is safety, and somewhere in there she learned the sadder half of it too, that a quiet, careful, steady life, like the one her father could never hold down, looked, from the outside, an awful lot like being trapped. So when a calm man in a plain suit offered her exactly the steadiness she'd never once had, she took it. And then she couldn't tell the difference between safe and boring. Because in the house she grew up in, they'd never had either one long enough to compare. I understood all of that, eventually. It doesn't excuse the anniversary dinner, but it's why I've never quite been able to hate her, and I want you to have it too, so that maybe you won't either. She wasn't a monster. She was a scared kid who mistook the safest man she'd ever met for the smallest one. There was a small thing that happened at the hardware store in town that I think about whenever I want to understand how blind a person can decide to be. We were in line, and the man behind the counter was Dave, who I've known for years, whose brother drives a delivery route for me, whose whole family more or less eats because the trades in this county have a supply house to buy from. Brooke was impatient, and to fill the time, she did the bit, the little travel-size version of it. She patted my arm and told Dave, "Don't mind us, my husband could spend an hour in a plumbing aisle. It's honestly his happy place. Isn't that just tragic?" And I watched Dave's face do a complicated thing, because Dave knew exactly whose company kept his brother employed, knew the name on the account that half the contractors in 3 counties ran on, and for a second, he looked at Brooke the way you'd look at someone telling a joke in a language they didn't know they were speaking. Then he caught my eye, and I gave him the smallest shake of my head. "Please, don't." And Dave, bless him, just said, "Yes, ma'am," and bagged the fittings. She thought he was agreeing with her. She had just been quietly corrected by a man behind a register, and she walked out of that store feeling like she'd won the room. The whole county was in on the same secret, and the only person who couldn't see it was the one person I would have given anything to have seen me. The dinner, the one I think of as the dinner, even though there were 100 dinners, was Sharon's anniversary. 35 years married to Brooke's father, a decent, hen-pecked man named Gary, who I actually liked, and Sharon booked the private room at the nicest steakhouse in the city, and there were maybe 14 people. Her sisters, Kayla and the Chicago husband, some cousins. I wore my good suit, the grey one, the one from the wedding, and I heard Sharon murmur to a sister, "Well, at least it fits." And over the entrees, when the table went quiet, the way tables do, one of the cousins asked me, politely, "So, Wade, what is it you do again?" And I opened my mouth, and Brooke got there first. She stood her wineglass down, and she smiled around the table, and she performed the bit. The bit she'd been building for 3 years, polished now, ready for an audience. "Oh, you have to understand about Wade," she said. "Wade is in," and she paused for effect, "plumbing supply." A ripple of laughter, right on cue. "He sells pipe," she went on, warming to it. "He actually clips coupons. He has a truck older than some of you. And honest to God, I think his idea of a splurge is the large coffee instead of the medium." She was grinning. "It's like being married to a very sweet, very frugal accountant from 1985. And they laughed, all of them. Kayla loudest, and Sharon with her tight, satisfied mouth. And I sat there in my good grey suit, and I felt the last warm thing in me go cold and still. And I smiled, because I had learned to take a joke. Here's what none of them knew, and what I want you to hold while you picture that table laughing. 2 counties over, at that exact hour, the night shift at my distribution center was loading trucks that would keep 300 job sites moving the next morning. Nearly 200 families had health insurance because of the boring man in the grey suit. The steakhouse we were sitting in, its heat, its hot water, ran on furnaces and fixtures that had come through my warehouses. Half the comfortable lives at that table, one way or another, ran on me. And they were laughing at me for being frugal. And the only person I wanted to explain it to was the woman leading the laughter. I looked at Brooke that night, and I finally understood, all the way down, that she had never once been curious about me. Not the money, me. She had married a costume, been disappointed the costume was all there was, and never suspected there might be a man underneath worth asking about. I drove home that night with Duke's head on my leg, and I didn't turn the radio on. Somewhere on the dark county road, past the sign for the distribution center she wouldn't look at, I heard my father as clear as if he were in the passenger seat. You find out who's with you when it looks like you've got nothing. And I thought, Dad, I did the test. I did exactly what you said, and I failed it anyway, because I passed it and married her anyway. That's the thing nobody warns you about the test. You can get the answer right and still lose if you love the person enough to pretend you didn't. I want to be honest about the next stretch, because this is where a lesser story would have me hatch a plan, and I didn't. I didn't scheme. I didn't set a trap. I have read enough of these stories to know you're waiting for the part where the clever man springs the reveal. And I have to disappoint you. Because for months after that dinner, I did nothing at all except get quieter and try, in my dumb, undramatic way, to save my marriage. I suggested counseling. She went twice and called it a snooze. I planned a trip, a real one, someplace with stars and no cell service, and she asked if we could go somewhere with better shopping. I even, God help me, thought about telling her, about driving her out to the distribution center and standing in the middle of all that steel and saying, "This is me. This is what I built. Did you ever wonder?" But every time I got close, I heard that dismissive laugh from the lawyer's office. "That's so gross. I'm not marrying you for this." And I understood that if I told her now, I would never again know whether the woman who suddenly found me interesting was in love with me or with the number. My father had given me a test I could never untake, so I said nothing, and I lost her, and I told myself I was being noble, when really, I was just afraid. The end, when it came, was not a scene. That's what people always get wrong about the end of a marriage. There's no thrown plate. There was just a Tuesday in the fall, and a manila envelope, and my wife sitting at the kitchen table with her coffee, calm as a Sunday, watching me open it. Inside was a petition for divorce. She'd already signed it. She'd already hired someone. She'd planned the whole thing while I was suggesting counseling, and she'd let me suggest it. And that, more than anything in the 12 pages that were about to change her life, is the part I had to forgive her for later. She let me try to save something she'd already killed. I set the papers down. I asked her the only thing I could think of, which was, why now? And Brooke, who I had loved, looked at me with something almost like kindness. The kind you show a pet you're leaving at a shelter. And she said, "Wade, I'm 33. I am not going to spend my one life being bored." And then, because she was already past me, already planning, she added the sentence that turned a sad thing into this story. She said, "Don't make it ugly." I talked to a lawyer. With the house and support, I'll be comfortable. I just want what's fair. What's fair? I almost laughed, and then I almost cried, and I did neither, because a stillness came over me that I recognized. It was my father's stillness, the one he had at his desk in the worst year, the one that isn't giving up. It's the opposite. It's a man finally seeing the board clearly. She thought she was leaving a frugal accountant from 1985. She thought there was a house to split, and a modest paycheck to garnish, and a comfortable little settlement waiting at the end of it. She had spent 3 years so certain I was nothing that she had never, not once, read the one document that told her exactly what I was. And it was still sitting in a fireproof box in my father's old office. 12 pages, her initials on every one, waiting as patiently as I had. I didn't say any of that. I picked up the papers, and I called Duke, and I drove to the Bluebird, and I sat in my booth while Nora poured coffee without being asked. And I called the only person who ever tells me the truth. Ellen picked up on the second ring. I told her Brooke had filed. I told her Brooke said she wanted what was fair, the house and support, that she'd talked to a lawyer. And Ellen was quiet for a moment, and then my 60-something attorney said the sentence that I have decided is the truest thing anyone said in this entire story. She said, "Wade, the agreement, did she ever actually read it?" "No," I said. "She never read a word of it." I heard Ellen exhale, slow, and I swear I could hear her almost smile. Not cruelly, just the way a person smiles when a long, loose thread finally pulls tight. "Then this is going to be very simple," she said, "and very quiet. And it is going to be nothing at all like what she thinks. Come in tomorrow. Bring the box. I'm going to tell you exactly what was in that box, and exactly what it did. And I'll be straight with you. The ending is the best part. The part a year down the road where everything she was so sure of comes out backwards. But you can't skip to it, because the whole point of this is the middle. The boring middle. The part she skipped. That's the part that cost her everything. So stay with me through the paperwork. And if a quiet man getting one fair shake is the sort of thing you came here for, go ahead and hit that subscribe button now, before it even gets good. Just so the machine knows there are still a few of us out here who read all the way to the end. The next morning, I sat across from Ellen with the fireproof box on my knees, like a man holding a casserole at a funeral. She poured coffee from the pot she keeps for people she likes, which is a short list. And she opened the agreement and laid it flat, and she put on the glasses, and for a few minutes, the only sound was Ellen turning pages she had written herself a lifetime ago. Then she took the glasses off and folded her hands and told me where things actually stood. And I'm going to give it to you the way she gave it to me, because the whole satisfaction of what came next lives in the boring parts. And I say that with love. Ohio does not hand a spouse half of a business just because they were married to its owner, she said. That's the first thing people get wrong. Buckeye was mine before Brooke ever met me. My grandfather started it. My father grew it. I inherited it years before that cousin's wedding. Property you bring into a marriage is separate property, and separate property does not get split in a divorce. The house on Sycamore, my father's house, same thing. Mine before I ever knew her name. So even with no agreement at all, Ellen said, she was never getting the company and she was never getting that house. People think marriage is a merger. It isn't. It's a partnership, and the law is careful about what each partner brought through the door. There was one real exposure, and this is the part I want you to understand, because it's where the agreement earned every dollar Ellen ever billed me. In Ohio, if a business is separate but it grows during the marriage because of the owner's own work, a court can decide that some of that growth, the active appreciation, became marital, something a spouse can claim a piece of, and Buckeye had grown a great deal in 3 years. Without the agreement, Brooke's lawyer would have had a real fight to make, an expert to hire, a number to chase. It could have been ugly and long and expensive. But that is exactly the fight the 12 pages had already ended, 3 weeks before the wedding, in a conference room where a young attorney begged my future wife to read what she was signing, and my future wife wrinkled her nose and said it was gross. Because the agreement said, in plain language on page 4 and again on page 9, that Buckeye Pipe and Supply, the holding company, all of it, and every dollar it ever grew into, was and would remain my separate property, and that each of us waived any claim to the other's separate estate and its appreciation. It said spousal support was limited to a defined amount and no more, and attached to it, Schedule A, was full disclosure of what I was worth on the day she signed, down to the account numbers, a hair over $31 million, with her own lawyer sitting beside her and telling her to read it. She had initialed the page that listed it. She had initialed the page that waved it. She had signed, at the very back, an acknowledgement. Ellen slid that last page across the desk to me and tapped it once with a short, unpainted nail. I read it. I had signed it too, 3 years before, without ever really seeing it, because on that day I'd only had eyes for the woman laughing beside me. It was a single paragraph in the flat, deadly language Ellen writes, and it said that the person signing had read the entire agreement, had been given full and complete disclosure of the other party's finances, had been advised by independent counsel of their own choosing, was signing freely and voluntarily, without duress, and understood the rights they were giving up. And under that paragraph, in Brooke's own quick, looping hand, the hand I'd seen on grocery lists and birthday cards, was her signature. She had sworn she read it. She had sworn it in writing, to a notary, next to her own lawyer, and then she had gone to lunch. That, Ellen said, is the whole ballgame. Not because a signature is magic, because every single door a person tries to use to break one of these agreements, Brooke had personally locked from the inside. She'll say, she didn't know what you were worth. It's disclosed, and she initialed it. She'll say she was pressured, rushed, didn't have time. She had 3 weeks and her own lawyer. She'll say it's unfair, unconscionable. She keeps everything she came in with, her car, her accounts, her things, plus a lump sum, and she's a healthy, employable woman of 33. There is no trapdoor, Wade. She stood in front of every one of them and initialed a page swearing she'd checked them all herself. I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest since the kitchen table. What does she actually get? And Ellen told me. Under the agreement, Brooke kept all of her own property, whatever she'd come in with and whatever was truly hers. She kept her car. And she received a lump sum, spelled out years in advance in a clause she never read, of $10,000 for each year of the marriage. 3 years. $30,000. That was it. That was what my wife was walking away with, the wife who had told the kitchen that morning that with the house and support she would be comfortable. $30,000 and her own Honda, from a man she'd never bothered to learn was worth $31 million. I sat with that for a long time in Ellen's quiet office. And here is where I have to be honest about myself, because I know what you want me to have felt, and I want to tell you the truth instead. I did not feel triumphant. I felt tired, and I felt sad, and under those two things, way down, I felt something cold and level and calm that I recognized as my father. Because a part of me, the part still married to her in my head, wanted to fix it. Wanted to say, Ellen, just give her the house, give her real support, let her land soft, I have plenty. And Ellen, who has known me since I was a boy, watched me think it, and she said, very gently, Wade, you can be generous. You are allowed to be generous. But understand what she's about to do, and decide after you've seen it. I didn't understand what she meant, not yet. I said, I don't want to destroy her, Ellen. I want to do what's fair. And Ellen said, then that's what we'll do. We'll offer her exactly what the agreement gives her, promptly, in full, no games, and we will not fight her over a single spoon, fair to the letter. And then, she said, we'll see if fair is what she actually wants. Because in my experience, the people who stand up at dinner and call a good man boring, when the day comes, they don't want fair. They want half. Go home, take the dog to the diner, let me make the offer. So I did. I took the dog to the diner. I ate a lot of breakfasts at the Bluebird that week, and Nora, who has known me since I was 17 and has never once in her life been impressed by me, watched my face over the coffee pot and finally said, on about the third morning, you want to talk about it or you want more toast? More toast, I said. She brought the toast. That is the whole thing about the people who are actually with you. They don't need the story. Nora had catered my wedding at a loss, and she'd have done the same for the divorce, if such a thing could be catered. And in 3 years, Brooke never once learned that Nora undercharged me on purpose, or why, or that half the reason I ate there every single day was that it was the one room in the county where nobody performed anything at me. Brooke thought the diner was sad. The diner was the safest place I had. For about a week, nothing happened. And in that week, I got to watch my father be right one more time. Because Brooke did not want fair. Brooke, who had no idea yet what was coming, spent that week telling everyone within reach exactly how this was going to go. I know because it's a small town, and Sharon is not a quiet woman. Sharon called me. My mother-in-law, soon to be nothing at all to me, called me on a Thursday to tell me not to be cheap. Those were close to her words. She said, "Wade, I know how you are about money, and I'm telling you right now, do not be small about this. Brooke gave you 3 years. You will give her that house and you will support her properly while she gets back on her feet. Or so help me, the whole family will know what you really are." I held the phone, and I looked out at Duke asleep in a square of sun on the kitchen floor, and I said, "Sharon, I promise you, I am going to give Brooke exactly what's fair, exactly what we agreed to, down to the dollar." And Sharon, hearing a cheapskate promise to be cheap, said, "Good," and hung up. And never once in the whole call did the woman think to ask what we had agreed to. Kayla was worse. And I only know this because Kayla is the kind of person who says things in a nail salon, 2 chairs down from someone who then tells Nora, and Nora tells me over the eggs. Kayla had Brooke half moved to the city already. There was an apartment being looked at, a good one, the kind with a doorman. There was, and this is the part I sat with the longest, there was already a man, someone from Kayla's circle, someone who traded something and flew somewhere and was, everyone agreed, so much more Brooke's speed. I don't tell you that to make her a villain in a second way. I tell you because it explains the math she was doing. In her head, she was about to be a woman with a settlement and a city apartment and an exciting new life, finally free of the frugal accountant from 1985. She was spending money she was sure was coming. She just had the boring man's number off by about $31 million, and she never knew which direction the error ran. The offer went out on a Monday. Ellen sent Brooke's lawyer the agreement, the full file, Schedule A, the acknowledgement page with the looping signature, and a cover letter proposing that we resolve everything precisely according to the terms both parties signed, promptly and without litigation. And then, Ellen told me later, there was silence from Columbus for 2 full days, which is the sound a good lawyer makes when she is reading something she was not told existed. I did not see the moment Brooke's attorney called her in. I've built it in my head 100 times, though. The tasteful office, the young woman who'd taken the case believing it was a modest man and a splittable house, sliding a 12-page document across her own desk toward my wife and asking, in a careful voice, "Brooke, have you ever actually read this?" I imagine Brooke laughing at first, the old laugh, the "that's so gross" laugh, and then not laughing. I imagine her lawyer turning to Schedule A. I imagine the number under my wife's own initials. And I imagine the exact quality of the quiet that must have come into that room. Because I know that quiet. I'd been living in a version of it for 3 years. She called me that night. Not the lawyer, Brooke. My phone lit up with her name at 9 in the evening, and I let Duke off my lap and I answered it. And there was no hello. There was just her voice, thin and high and furious, and underneath the fury, frightened in a way I'd never once heard from her. "You lied to me," she said. "You had me sign. You hid, Wade. You have 31. You let me. 3 years you let me think." And she couldn't finish any of the sentences. They kept collapsing under her. And I want to tell you I was gentle, because I was. But I was also, finally, after 3 years, done being small. I said, "Brooke, I never lied to you, not once. It's all in the agreement. It's on Schedule A. Your own lawyer, the one I paid for, put it in your hands 3 weeks before our wedding and told you to read every page, and told you to take a week, and told you to call her with questions. And you laughed, and you said reading it was gross, and you said you weren't marrying me for money. and you initialed the page that listed every dollar without looking at it. I didn't hide anything from you, Brooke. I disclosed all of it, in writing, to you and your attorney. You just weren't interested. You were never once interested in. She was crying now, and I heard 3 years of certainty coming apart, and she said the thing that I think was the truest thing she ever said to me. She said, "Why didn't you just tell me? Why would you let me sign something and not? Why wouldn't you just say it?" And I understood that she genuinely could not comprehend a man who would sit on $31 million and let his own wife call him frugal at her mother's anniversary. To her, it was insane. To her, money was the loudest fact about a person, and a man who kept it quiet must be running a con. So I told her the truth, all of it, for the first and only time, standing in my father's kitchen with his dog at my feet. I told her about the worst year, the bankruptcy that almost took everything, my father grey at his desk. I told her about the woman I'd almost married, who loved a man whose family owned something and left the second it looked like we owned nothing. I told her what my father said to me the night I got the ring back. "You find out who's with you when it looks like you've got nothing." And I said, "Brooke, that's why. Not to trap you. I wasn't testing you like some game. I needed, one time in my life, to be loved by someone who thought I had nothing. I gave you every day for 3 years to be curious about me, to ask one real question, to come see the thing I built. You called it boring and you took pictures you never looked at. I didn't keep a secret from you. You just decided there was nothing under the boring, and you never checked. The whole time the answer was in a box in the next room, and all you ever had to do was read it." There was a long silence on the line, and then Brooke quietly said, "I would have loved you differently if I'd known." And that, right there, is the whole thing. That's the entire story in one sentence, and she didn't even hear herself say it. She would have loved me differently if she'd known about the money. I said, "I know you would have. That's why I never told you. Good night, Brooke." And I hung up, and I sat down on the kitchen floor next to my dog, and I stayed there a while. I want to be clear about what I was grieving down there on that kitchen floor, because it wasn't the money, and it wasn't even really the marriage. I was grieving 3 years I had spent being unseen by the one person whose whole job was supposed to be to see me. That is a specific kind of lonely, being invisible inside your own house, lying next to someone every night. And it is worse than the empty house kind, because at least the empty house is honest about it. I would have given her the company. I want you to know that because it's true, and it's the only thing in this whole story I'm proud of. If she had ever, one single time, been curious about the man instead of disappointed by the costume, I'd have handed her the keys to every branch and never thought twice. She didn't want the man. She wanted a better costume. And the sad joke of it is that the man came with about $31 million, and she divorced him to go looking for it somewhere else. What happened after that was not a war, because you cannot fight a document you already swore in writing that you read. Her lawyer, to her credit, was honest with her, the way good lawyers are honest, which is to say expensively and all at once. She told Brooke what Ellen already knew. Every challenge was a dead end. Claim he hid his assets. Can't, it's disclosed and you initialed it. Claim you were rushed or pressured. Can't, 3 weeks and your own counsel. Claim it's unconscionable, unfair on its face. Can't, you keep everything of yours plus a lump sum, and you're young and able to work. The agreement was, in the flat language of the profession, ironclad, and the person who had forged every link in that iron was Brooke, at a conference table, initialing pages she thought were beneath her. There was a mediation, because there's almost always a mediation, and I'll tell you about it because it's the closest thing this story has to the scene you've been waiting for. And it's quiet, and I've come to think quiet is worse. A neutral office, a long table, Brooke and her lawyer on one side, Ellen and me on the other. Brooke would not look at me. She looked 10 years older than she had at the anniversary dinner, and I felt no pleasure in that, none. I want that understood. Her lawyer made the arguments she was obligated to make, gently, for the record, the pressure, the disclosure, the fairness. And Ellen, who does not raise her voice any more than a glacier does, answered each one by sliding a single page across the table. The disclosure page, initialed. The waiver page, initialed. And last, the acknowledgement, with the looping signature, the paragraph that swore Brooke had read every word. Ellen laid it in the center of the table, face up, and she didn't say anything at all. And the room went very, very quiet. And Brooke looked down at her own handwriting, swearing she'd done the one thing she hadn't done. And there was simply nothing left to argue. She signed the settlement that afternoon. She kept her car and her own accounts and her clothes and the things that were hers. She received a check for $30,000, $10,000 for each year, exactly as the agreement she never read had promised her in language she never saw. She did not get the house because it had been my father's before it was ever ours. She did not get $1 of Buckeye or its growth or its future. And I did one thing that wasn't required. The only generous thing I allowed myself, and I did it quietly so it couldn't look like gloating. I paid her lawyer's bill in full, so that Brooke would walk out of that marriage owing no one anything. Not even the woman who'd had the sad job of reading her the pages she wouldn't read herself. Ellen thought I was soft for it. Maybe I am. My father would have understood. We were divorced by the end of winter. It was, in the end, exactly as boring as I am. No fireworks, no courtroom showdown. A stack of papers, initialed properly this time, and a woman driving her own Honda back toward a city and a life she was sure would be more exciting than the one she'd called beneath her. I stood on the porch of my father's house and watched her taillights go, and Duke leaned his whole weight against my leg the way he does, and the porch light I'd left on for 3 years of late warehouse nights was still burning, and for the first time in a long time, the house behind me felt like mine. Now, I promised you at the start that this wasn't really a story about money, and I meant it. So let me tell you what I did with a little of it, because it's the part I'm actually proud of. That spring, I went to Ellen, and then to my accountant, and I set up 2 things. The first was a profit-sharing pool for every single person who worked at Buckeye, top to bottom, the drivers and the counter kids and the warehouse crew and the office staff. Real money, the kind that changes a family's year, tied to nothing but showing up and doing the work. Nearly 200 people. The second was a scholarship in my father's name, Cliff Renner, for kids in the county who want to go into the trades, the plumbers and electricians and welders and heating techs that keep the lights on and the water hot, the boring, essential people that a certain kind of person likes to laugh at over steak. I didn't put my name on either one. My father would have hated that, and so do I. The first profit-sharing checks went out that summer. I made a point of not being there when they landed, but Gus called me that night, and Gus is not a man who calls, and he didn't say much. He just said, "Cliff would be proud of you." And then he cleared his throat about 4 times and told me he had to go. That was worth more to me than every dollar Brooke ever thought she was owed. I'd have traded the whole $31 million to hear my father say that sentence to me himself. And the closest I will ever get is an old foreman crying into a phone about a pipe company. I'll take it. It's the richest I have ever felt. Here's what happened next, because I know that's the part you really want, the update. And I saved it because it's the best part. The same way the best part of my whole life turned out to be the quiet stuff nobody bothered to read. It's been a little over a year now. Last I heard, Brooke is back in her old apartment. Not the Dorman building she and Kayla toured, the real one, the walk-up she had before she ever met me, because $30,000 does not go very far in a city. And the exciting man who traded something and flew somewhere turned out to be a great deal less interested in a divorced woman with a Honda and a modest settlement than he'd been in a woman he thought was about to be rich. Funny how that works. I heard, second-hand, through the nail salon telegraph that runs this county, that she tells the story now as the one who got cheated, the man who hid millions from his own wife, and I've decided that's all right. It's even a little bit true from where she's standing, and I'm not in the habit of standing where she's standing anymore. Every version of that story leaves out the same 12 pages. It always will. That's not my problem to carry. Sharon doesn't speak to me, which I count as one of the settlement's better terms. Kayla, I'm told, has moved on to being disappointed in someone else's husband. And me, I'm exactly where I was, which is the whole point, which was always the whole point. I still eat at the Bluebird. I still drive the truck, though Duke's getting too old to jump into it now. So I've learned to lift him, and he's undignified about it, and I don't care. I still sell pipe and fittings and the 1,000 dull parts that keep a whole county in hot showers and warm kitchens. And nearly 200 people still build their lives on that boring, essential work. And this year, they built them a little better. The town knows the whole story now, or its own version of it. And the town has been kind, in the gruff way small places are kind, which is to say that nobody has said one word about it to my face, and everybody has found some small way to say it anyway. Nora started leaving the last piece of pie under an upside-down plate for me and forgetting to charge me, which is the entire emotional vocabulary of that woman. A contractor I've sold pipe to for 20 years clapped me on the shoulder in the parking lot and said, "Good to have you back, Wade," which was strange, because I had never gone anywhere. Then I understood he didn't mean the divorce. He meant that for 3 years I'd been a little bit gone, folded down small to fit a life that kept telling me I was too much trouble at full size, and I hadn't even noticed how folded up I'd gotten, until the day I finally got to stand up straight again. There is someone now. I'll just say that much, because it's new, and it's mine, and I've learned to be careful with the things that are mine. She's not from money, and she doesn't much care about it, and she thinks my truck is funny in the right way, the fond way, not the ashamed way. She met me as Wade, who runs the supply house and eats breakfast alone, and she liked that man just fine before she ever had one reason to like anything else, and I have never sat her down and recited a number at her, and I don't think I'm going to for a good long while. Because I finally understand what my father was really telling me, all those years, in that recliner with the oxygen line under his nose. He wasn't teaching me to test people. He was teaching me that the people worth keeping are the ones who are already there when it looks like you've got nothing, sitting across from you at the diner, leaning their weight against your leg, laughing at your truck in the fond way. They were there the whole time. I'd just been so busy guarding the door that I almost forgot to notice who was already inside. So that's the story of how my wife spent 3 years telling everyone I was boring, and how she turned out to be exactly right. And how being right about that cost her everything she thought she was owed and nothing she actually valued. About $31 million worth of boring, sitting quietly in a box in the next room for anyone who ever cared enough to look. She never looked. Her own lawyer told her to. I told her to. The whole time, all she ever had to do was read the pages in front of her, the way you'd read a person if you were curious whether there was anyone home. She wasn't curious. And curiosity, it turns out, is just love paying attention. I wish I'd known that word for it sooner. I might have taught it to her. But some people you can only teach by letting them sign their own name, in their own looping hand, to the one thing they refuse to read. If you made it all the way to the end of a story about a man who sells pipe, then you're my kind of people. And I'd take it as a kindness if you'd hit that like button and subscribe, because it genuinely helps a small channel like this one more than you'd think. And I want to know what you honestly believe, because I still turn it over some nights. Was I wrong to never tell her, to let her marry a man she thought had nothing? Or did she author every bit of this herself the day she decided a quiet man wasn't worth one question? There's no clean answer, and I'd rather hear yours than pretend I have mine. Tell me in the comments, and while you're there, I'm always curious where you're all listening from, so drop your state and your age, and tell me this too. If somebody handed you 12 pages that would change your whole life, and all you had to do was read them, are you sure, really sure, that you would?